I'm going to be telling you a scary childhood story. When I was 2 years old, my mom passed away. My dad wasn't in the picture, so I went to go live with my grandparents. My grandparents lived in a super old home that was built in the 1800s. I was a very imaginative child. So when I told my grandparents that I used to see people in the house, they just didn't believe me. There was one lady in particular that I would always see. She would sit at the end of my bed and watch me fall asleep. I wasn't scared of her because I thought she was an actual person. Plus, I was super little, so nothing even crossed my mind. At this point, I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember her talking to me constantly. She even sang me the song Rockabye Baby to get me to go to bed one night. Every single day when I would get home, I could see her in my window. At that point, I thought she was just waiting for me. She just wanted to be my friend, right? But as I got older, things started to get really weird between me and her. She wasn't this nice lady anymore. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of the lady in my room who would sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. No one else in my family could see her. She even told me that she was my mom. I really believed her. If you remember, my mom passed away when I was 2. So, it seemed pretty real that it was my mom. I didn't really remember what my mom's face looked like when she passed away. And this lady, could be my mom. She continued to sing me lullabies every single night when I would go to bed. She would always be waiting for me in the window when I would get home from school. But I figured out pretty quickly it wasn't my mom. My mom was a sweet, kind-hearted person. This spirit was evil. She would get mad at me every single time any of my friends would come over. She told me she could see my future and that I was going to go to hell after I died in a car accident. It scared me so much, but no one believed me. It got to the point where I never even wanted to go in the car because I thought I was going to die. She convinced me I was evil. Stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 of the lady who used to sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. This spirit was evil, and she started to convince me that I was evil too. She convinced me that I would go to hell because I was a horrible child, even though I wasn't. She convinced me that every single person in my life hated me. She even started to control my dreams, and I would wake up every single night screaming at the top of my lungs from a night terror, and she would be sitting at the end of my bed. This went on for years. When I turned 9, my grandpa passed away. And because it was a really big house, me and my grandma moved to a different house. And the evil spirit was just gone. I never saw her again. But was she really gone? When I was 15, I went to a psychic. The moment I walked into the room, she could feel a dark energy enter the room. She told me that someone was following me every single step I took. And when she said that, I knew exactly what she was talking about. After that, I went to a medium, and after many sessions with her, the dark presence was finally gone. This story is why you should never mess with the Ouija boards. We moved into my dad's girlfriend's house, where one of her daughters lived upstairs, my brother lived upstairs, her other daughter lived down in the basement, along with me, who lived in a makeshift room in the basement. One night, me and her 2 daughters decided to buy an Ouija board. After my dad and his girlfriend went to bed, me and her daughters all went downstairs, grabbed a bunch of candles, set up the Ouija board, and grabbed a bunch of our great-grandparents' stuff. We wanted to see if any of our great-grandparents would talk to us. We were so excited because the Ouija board was working and things were moving it. We asked what the spirit's name was, expecting it to be one of our great-grandparents, but it said its name was Tick. T-I-C. We asked it to repeat it again, and it spelled out T-I-C. We knew that it wasn't one of our great-grandparents. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of why you should never do an Ouija board. So after it said its name was Tick, we asked how old it was. The spirit responded with 9 years old. We asked what gender it was. There was no response. We knew for sure at this point we were not talking to one of our great-grandparents. I wanted to stop right then and there. I was really freaked out, and I knew that we weren't talking to something good, but my older stepsister wanted to keep going. So out of peer pressure, of course, I kept going. She asked if it was human. Its response was no. We asked if we were safe. The spirit said yes, but I really didn't feel safe. We asked if the spirit was stuck in the house. The response was yes. The next thing my older stepsister asked, which I really wish she didn't, is if Tick was the only one there with us. The response was no. 60 seconds is not enough time for this story, and the story is really long, so stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 to the Ouija board story, and why you should never use an Ouija board. So my older stepsister asked if Tick was the only one there with us. The answer was no. She asked if all the spirits there with us were good spirits. The Ouija board said no. Right as we asked that, the bathroom was right behind us, and we heard a huge loud slam in the bathroom. All of us were really freaked out, just sitting there not knowing what to do. The candles started flickering. There was so much tension in the room. I have never felt anything like it. That is when my other stepsister screamed at the top of her lungs and told me to move. She saw a black hand approaching from behind me and was gonna grab my face. Because she screamed so loud, my dad woke up and we heard him, so we said goodbye really quickly. I went upstairs really quick to calm my dad down and say everything was fine. But after that night, we awoke something and a lot more things happened. Stay tuned for part 4. This is part 4 of the Ouija board. So after we used the Ouija board, we definitely awoke something in the house. The energy downstairs was so intense that none of us could sleep down there. Because of this, me and my older stepsister slept upstairs for literally weeks. Remember the shadow of the hand that wrapped around my face in part 3? Well, that hand didn't disappear. My stepmom said she saw it multiple times when she would go downstairs and change the laundry. It got to the point where her and my dad didn't even want to go downstairs. The cat would chase things that weren't even there. Doors would slam. Floorboards would creak at night. My dad would constantly see my cat chasing a figure, and all you could see was the figure's spine. It would run on all fours. The hauntings got so bad that my dad decided that we needed to move out. Ever since then, nobody has lived in that house for longer than 2 months.
This is why you should never play hide and seek. A mom decided to play hide and seek with her 2 kids. The mom began counting, ready or not, here I come. She begins searching the downstairs kitchen because she knows that they hide there every single time. As she's walking to the kitchen, she starts saying, I wonder where they are. She looks under the table and sees they aren't there, which is kind of odd. She knew they were too scared to go into the basement alone, but she decided to check anyway. They weren't there either. She began to panic. The mom then says, Jordan, Casey, come out now. Mommy's not playing anymore. There was no answer. Panic really begins to set in. She decides to call 911 and reaches an operator. She tells the operator what's wrong and the operator sends an officer to her house. Once the officer arrives, he says, don't worry, we will find them. As she's sitting in the living room, she hears giggling and laughing and hears a closet door slam upstairs. She sprints upstairs and says, Jordan, Casey, you worried me sick. She opened the closet door and nobody was there. While all of this is going on, she hears the doorbell ring. She runs downstairs and finds the officer holding Jordan and Casey. The officer says they were hiding in the shed out back. Then Jordan looks at mommy and says, why were you telling us to stay in the shed?
You like taking pictures of your friends and family? One woman took photos of her daughter, but what she saw after the photos were developed was terrifying. So her daughter always dreamt of being a ballerina, until one tragic day when she fell ill. The doctor said that she didn't have long. She quickly lost a lot of energy and soon could barely leave her bed. But one day when her mother came into her room, she was dancing again. Her mother was so happy. She grabbed her film camera and began taking photos, and soon after something horrifying happened. Her daughter's eyes rolled back and she fell on the floor. She was quickly taken to the hospital, where doctors said that she succumbed to her illness because the dancing was too much for her heart to handle. However, when her mother developed the photos that she took earlier just to remember her daughter by, she could not believe what she saw. In every picture, she saw a dark shadow standing behind her daughter, clutching her head and pulling her back and forth. Something in her daughter's room was forcing her to dance.
I feel like a lot of people undermine the importance of mental illnesses, and this is exactly why they should never be taken lightly. Marty Sanchez was a 33-year-old mother of a 3-week-old baby. She had severe mental illnesses but was never given proper care for them. She started to hear voices in her head and became very paranoid. These voices were telling her that she needed to get rid of her baby because the devil was inside of him. Once she started hearing these voices telling her these things, she tried to admit herself into a psychiatric hospital, but they denied her, sent her home with some medication and told her, hey, you're crazy, but you're gonna have to deal with it by yourself. Marty was aware that these thoughts weren't normal. So when she would feel like she might do something bad to her son, she would give him to her sister. But her sister would give him back to Audie after she thought Audie was good again. Although she knew Audie was having thoughts about harming her own son. And she knew about Audie's severe mental illnesses as well. Their whole family did. There was several warning signs, but the baby was never taken out of her care. And this led to a devastating outcome. One night, Audie was staying with her mother and sister after she got in a fight with her baby father. Audie's sister had woken up to some loud screaming. It was Audie screaming after she had cut her son's head off and ate part of his brain.
This is why you should always sit in the back seat. Vivian was spending a year in Korea when something terrifying happened. One night she was going out with her 2 roommates who spoke Korean, and at the end of the night they decided to get a taxi home. Vivian sat in the front and her 2 roommates sat in the back. This would be her first mistake. The driver spoke really good English and began telling jokes. Vivian found them really funny but soon realized that her roommates weren't laughing. In fact, they had a strange expression on their faces. Vivian said what's wrong, but they wouldn't answer. Suddenly one of her roommates said something to the driver in Korean and he pulled over on the side of the road. Vivian knew something was wrong. wrong. They weren't anywhere near their apartment, but her roommates got out of the taxi and started walking away quickly. Vivian paid the driver, then got out to follow them. And that's when she found out the truth. Her roommate said, "Did you hear it? It was coming from the trunk of the taxi. A woman's voice saying, 'Help me, help me.'" This is why you should never go to sleep early. Onzer was a girl named Rebecca who shared a bedroom with her sister. But one night something terrifying happened, something no one can explain. Her sister would always go to sleep early because of work, but one night Rebecca felt exhausted from school, so she decided to sleep early too. She could have never expected the horrifying things this would lead to. When she opened her bedroom door, the lights were already off and her sister was in bed. She asked, "Are you asleep already? I still have to shower." Her sister replied, "Lie down. It's too late, shower in the morning." Rebecca said, "No, but her sister interrupted her. "I said lie down." This time her voice was much angrier. Annoyed, Rebecca went into the bathroom anyways, but found someone was already in there. Then her mom came out of the living room. "Dad's taking a long time in there, huh?" Rebecca said, pointing to the bathroom door. But her mom looked confused. "No, he's in the living room with me watching TV." Rebecca stopped. That's when the bathroom door opened and her sister stepped out. To this day, Rebecca still wonders who was in her bedroom and what would have happened if she had lied down like it told her to. This is why you should never go on a Ferris wheel. Once a couple went to an amusement park when they saw something terrifying. There's a Ferris wheel there that was really popular, but it did have some rumors about it going around town. They say years ago a boy came there with his parents who knew he wasn't old enough to ride the Ferris wheel, so they left him alone. But this boy didn't want to be without his parents, so at the last minute he grabbed onto the bars, lifting him high up in the air. Eventually he couldn't hang on anymore, so he fell. But this couple thought it might just be a story, so they went on the Ferris wheel anyways. This is when the unimaginable happened. Everything seemed to be normal at first, but when they got to the highest point, the Ferris wheel stopped. Then it burst into flames out of nowhere. People began screaming in terror, some people fell, eventually they had to be rescued by a helicopter. The owners of the amusement park had no choice but to demolish the Ferris wheel. But this is when they found out something that chilled them to the bone. While they were taking it apart to find the reason it burst into flames, they found a pair of tiny shoes stuck to the mechanism.